The O.R. Tambo Liberation Route. Two stories, one South African and another Cuban, about one-time girls and now women, told to Ari and now shared with the Poetry Hub. The O.R. Tambo Liberation Route was born because of these stories. Mama, I do not mean to be disrespectful, but I must tell you this, that I no longer want to watch your struggle videos. I am tired of feeling the weight of hatred inside me. Please release me. And you must know, I love you so much. A comrade and friend told me the story about her and her daughter.
R. Others before you and your peers. Langalibele, Mahato, Mahabane, Gumede, Sime, Chuma, Muroka, Lutuli, with the patience of a hen hatched the movement. From a color speckled past to their present, to our future, that movement as close to these multitudes as the heartbeat to a living being. Deep in their being is the defiance, is the pulse, is the pliable, tough spirit that knows freedom sounds deep in their rib cages like a love song. Forever bringing tears, we fear not the rigors of struggle. Barefooted or booted, listen to our footsteps, unending they are as we march. The movement moves as we move it.
I was young, maybe 16 years old. It was my turn to walk the liberation route to the Sierra Maestra. We walked and I fell and had a deep wound on my thigh. It was very painful. They said that I must remain behind while some of my peers were going to continue walking where Cher, Castro, Camilo, and many other freedom fighters walked. I said no. I am not remaining behind. I will walk with my peers. I'm glad I made that hard decision. We walked from the beginning to the end and back. I belong to my peer group. A Cuban comrade and friend told me the story. She is now maybe about 60 something. She was most proud when she related the story.
It is O.R. He knew the way, a concession from us to say to those who live here, we are all Africans. How do we come eyeball to eyeball with you, OR, this generation with you? You taught us 100 years of a focused and educated fight for freedom, for it to be forever the heartbeat of the movement, calling, whispering, seeking ways and means for all to know. Batho, boto, Pele, OR, this credo which molded future fighters, skilled to walk the world's highways. Ask Masisulu, for she was there, young middle-aged mother, freedom fighter, stalwart, exits at elder age. You did, Masisulu, in your silent looking, observing with a keen eye. You groomed young women, you together with the female stalwarts, shaped the movement to speak of women. They issued from you as the sun does from the horizon, between the earth and the heavens. Yes. And if you asked your peers, OR, these women young with backbones, hard as steel but pliable as worms, all of you will agree, one by one, the years piled up past a time. And if you ask your peers, OR, these women young with backbones, hard as steel but pliable as worms, all of you will agree, one by one, the years piled up past a time that is as still as these mountains of Mbizana, where the breeze embraces the stoic hills under the white clouds and the overbearing blue skies, where the rolling landscapes forever tempt the eye to walk them. Here, where the songs of peasants were sung, have been sung and are being sung, here and now, as they intertwine the mathematics of the bow and the arrow, and stick-wielding skills and fighting spear in hand, they are intertwined into a myriad of myths, of gods and men, and meanings of life lived simply. That is why we are here still. Listen to the praise poets.
The OR Tambo Liberation Route, nicknamed We Walk on the Footsteps of Freedom Fighters, was launched in 2010. It began with 2 youth from each province, accompanied by an elder with indigenous knowledge healing system skills from the 9 provinces. Then a tour of the key heritage sites in Gauteng, right through to Kasane, the Botswana border town with Namibia, Zimbabwe and Zambia. However, it was discontinued because of lack of funds.
Here dreams have been shaped into commodities. Hymns have been and are sung here. We are all of us. The koi and the sand spread across the land. The way that back-breaking work is done, songs are sung here, are woven here. As idioms and proverbs weighted in experience are sung here and said for all to hear. They will be sang in isiXhosa, Sesotho, English and Afrikaans, because the bloody wars were fought here. Also here, remember the languages of the koi and the san. And isiXhosa, Sesotho, English and Afrikaans locked down horns, fiercely fighting for space in the mind, which molded the national question of the people and the land. OR. Here we are and we were when change stared us in the eye, like a mother who never now shouts at her children but commands in silence. A stare and a stern look as Mam Porsho and Mamulale do. The silence which speaks louder than the temptation to shout, the language of mothers taught in struggle. Oh, OR, you will be amused by what we learned from all of you and must use how paltry things must not occupy us. You will be in communion with hundreds and millions and billions of freedom fighters. This we must not forget, including Jesus Christ, who walked barefoot on water, generations upon generations of freedom fighters of the earth, conceived of woman and man, eternal optimists, but realists who know it is stupid for a monkey to cover its eyes and think it is not seen. You who once for freedom walked with utter dazzling and utter pride in the knowledge that life is like a fruit. It nourishes the spirit, fulfills its purpose, and then fades, but so little time it has to ripen, to change color and shape and skin, taste and use, to fall with a thud if not plucked, its juices splashing, soaking rock and soil. This our land, this freedom fighters, fruits under the blue sky, we hope you will remember. Do ancestors have memory?
Good morning and welcome to the National Press Club. My name is Andrew Mollison. I am Chief Political Correspondent for the Cox newspapers and President of the National Press Club. I'd like to welcome my fellow members and their guests in the audience today. I'd now like to introduce the guests at our head table. Almost 40 years ago, South African author Alan Paton wrote in Cry the Beloved Country, "There is a man sleeping in the grass, and over him is gathering the greatest storm of all these days." That storm is now gathered, and at its eye stands this morning's speaker. Seldom has a leader appeared before the National Press Club at a time when his country faces a more uncertain future. The only two certainties involving the developing war in South Africa, according to expatriate white South African editor Donald Woods, is that, quote, that the whites will lose and that the more fiercely they fight, the more comprehensively they will lose, unquote. Whatever the future holds for South Africa, the African National Congress will surely play a major role, as will its President General, Oliver Tambo, who is here with us today. The ANC has been banned in South Africa for more than a quarter of a century, and its titular head, Nelson Mandela, still is serving a life sentence for treason. Yet it remains the single most unifying force among the often feuding political and ethnic factions that make up South Africa's majority black population. Our speaker was born in Eastern Cape Province in 1917. After completing secondary education in Johannesburg, he won a scholarship to Fort Hare College. He later taught science and math at the secondary level until 1947. He founded the ANC Youth League along with Mr. Mandela. The League pressed the parent organization into a more militant stance, a militancy which has progressed to the point of being of concern to some in the West. Mr. Tambo rose through the ranks of the ANC and by 1952 had also qualified as an attorney. Following the Sharpsville massacre in 1960, it became evident that the white minority regime in Pretoria was preparing to ban the ANC and to detain its leaders and charge them with treason. It was decided that our speaker should leave his country to work abroad for the total isolation of South Africa's apartheid regime. It is in that cause that Mr. Tambo has come to the United States and to the podium of the National Press Club. Now, here is what Senate Minority Leader Robert Dole said about the meeting scheduled for today between Mr. Tambo and the United States Secretary of State, George Shultz. Shultz, he said, should use the meeting, quote, to pressure Oliver Tambo to renounce terrorism. Meeting with Mr. Tambo without that kind of precondition comes perilously close to sending the wrong kind of message on terrorism, the same wrong kind of message that may have inadvertently been sent in our arms dealings with Iran, unquote. Here is what Nelson Mandela has said about today's speaker, quote, Oliver Tambo is more than a brother to me. He is my greatest friend and comrade for nearly 50 years. There is no difference between his views and mine. In my introduction, I have mentioned what other people have said about Mr. Tambo. Members and guests of the National Press Club, we now have a chance to hear his views. I present to you Oliver R. Tambo, President General of the African National Congress.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, it is a singular honor to the ANC to be given the opportunity to address this extremely important body, the United States media. We are in the United States on what has turned out to be a most important visit, perhaps more important than any we have had before. The reason is, in the first instance, that we have found the issue of apartheid in South Africa most topical. We have found that the American people are deeply concerned about developments in South Africa. Wherever we have gone, we have sensed a deep feeling of genuine support for us and a desire to bring about the end of the system of apartheid, which is tormenting not only the people of South Africa and Namibia, but the people of the whole region of Southern Africa. May I give you some background about the ANC in terms of the leaders who have served on it. The founder, Dr. Prixley Seme, was a student of Columbia University in New York. He spent a number of years in this country. When he arrived back in South Africa, he had this idea of the formation of a national organization to fight for the rights of the Africans. He saw the Africans united across tribal boundaries, one body of people, and he was the main mover behind the formation of the ANC. But the ANC was formed not only by the people of South Africa. What we call Lesotho, Botswana, Swaziland today, Zambia, these were represented at the formation of the African National Congress. It's an organization of that whole region. The kings of Swaziland have served. The kings of Lesotho were there. The chiefs of Botswana, what was then Barotseland, they were there. So the ANC is a regional body. It relates to that region. It has been there since 1912. It is part of the history of South Africa. It has become well known today in South Africa among all our people. It is supported by them.